Ready when you are.
So, hello, beautiful people. Today we are with Pedro Moreira, or Pedro on the road. He was traveling for more than 90 countries. He's an author of already 3 books, and he's also a host in the Metamorfose Ambulante Podcast. How are you today, Pedro?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Really nice, thank you. How is everything going with the situation?
Well, so far it's been pretty much the same. Like I stopped partying so much, and for me that was the hardest part because I really enjoy partying, if you remember.
Yes.
But with house party apps and group chats and stuff like that, I managed to still have some drinks with my friends, so that was okay. But now the summer season is coming, and I think that's when I'm really gonna feel the impact of the coronavirus. It's like I'm gonna have a late impact when everybody else is starting to feel something more, like more people, more business. That's when I'm gonna lose mine because I sell my books at the beach, and it's difficult enough to sell a book at the beach if there's no barriers. But if I'm 3 meters away from a person with a mask, and if I can't, for example, if I can't put my book in their hands, that's going to make it more difficult because once people touch the book, that's when I close the sale. But I probably won't be able to do that. But whatever, I'll see. In 2 weeks I will find out. So yeah,
Okay.
other than that, everything is just going.
Okay. Family, everything is good?
Yeah, and everything is okay. Thank
That
you.
is important. So I want first to, if you can tell me for the listeners and the followers that still don't know you, if you can tell us a little bit about your story, where are you from, what you did in life?
Sure. So I'm from a small town, half an hour from Porto, called Valcambre, and until I was 18, I was just like everyone else, I guess. I've always had a certain. We all have our universe inside ourselves, and I always felt like mine was more towards the existentialism and metaphysical subjects that cross a person's mind. Some people, they're more into, I don't know, gardening or football or this or that, and it occupies their minds. My mind has always been quite occupied about, why we're here and is there any meaning to life and what's coming after. This kind of thoughts always crossed me. So from a very young age, I started writing since I was in primary school. And but I never took anything seriously because I was a kid. And then I went to university in Coimbra, and I went to take psychology. And while I was there, or a bit before, I started to do my first trips, which eventually would define a lot of my life. But when I was studying in university, that's the first time that I traveled on my own without my parents. So gradually, I was feeling what I could take from traveling and what it actually meant to me. And I don't know. It's not. I don't think that everybody has to travel or anything like that. But different people like different things, and I could feel that the impact that I had when I was traveling seemed to be something that maybe wasn't not usual. I don't know. And but I never really considered doing it like for a year because I didn't know anyone else that did it. Because in Portugal, the culture has changed a lot in the last 10 years. Now, almost everyone knows someone that did the kind of trips that I did. But 10 years ago, it was more rare. And I'm not saying this to, oh, look at me, I'm so unique. It's not like that. It's just how it was. So when we don't know anyone that did something that we think is spectacular, we might think that it's only in books and movies. So I never really considered doing a trip like that until after Coimbra. I went to Norway. I was there for 6 months and doing an internship, working with drug addicts. And then I went to England. And finally, the first time I actually considered doing a trip like the ones that I've done was when I was in India, in Goa, in 2009, like 11 years ago. And it was precisely because in the same night, I met like 10 people that were doing the kinds of trips that I thought was just for special people. But what happened was that they weren't special. They were just like me. I'm not special. I'm just someone else. And when I realized that they were just someone else like me, I realized that I could do it as well. So I went back to England and I quit my job and I did my first trip. I crossed Europe and Asia. Like I hitchhiked for 20,000 kilometers in spite of never having hitchhiked before. And, and I visited countries like Pakistan and India and Iran, Iraq. And then I never thought I would be in those countries, because it's not like a country that you think, oh, most people don't think like, oh, I'm going to visit Pakistan. And having had the opportunity to do so was really something that was very important for me. And in this trip, I realized that I had to do this again and again. So my second trip was a few years later, and I took a bicycle and I crossed from Portugal to South Africa cycling. Took me about, and I never cycled before. I mean, I could cycle, but I was not one of those people that you see on a Sunday morning cycling. And that trip was incredible. And then I came back and I wrote a book about that. And I came back from my last trip about 2 years ago. This time I hitchhiked Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico. And my plan for this trip was I wouldn't stay in a hotel or hostel ever, and I wouldn't take a bus or a train ever. I would just hitchhike and stay in people's places. And yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been writing my books, and I don't wish to go back to being a psychologist anymore. And I have my little show here in Portugal where I interview travelers, and I feel like I'm living. My life is not for sure. I have few things for sure. I never know if I'm gonna be able to be doing this next year, but so far I'm very happy and I'm enjoying my life. So I'm very happy to be alive.
And at least
Sorry
you
if it
are.
went longer than if
No,
you
it's
were
so
expecting.
perfect, and I think it's important to understand from the beginning until the present to understand all the story, because it's beautiful, and you are doing this at least for the last 10 years or more.
Yeah, more, yeah, like 100%, not so much, because in the last 10 years, on and off, I would go back to being a psychologist. But this path that I'm on began about 11 years ago. Yeah.
I want to pick up on that. On pet, I want to ask you because it's something that I think it's very important for me. Do you think that you already found your purpose in life? Because I think it's every person for me has a different flame. Did you find already yours?
I think I can never really find mine because I'm not really sure there's an accurate answer for that, because I don't know what it means, the purpose, but I know how I can. So I don't know if there's any meaning to life. I really enjoy being alive, but I think it's just like a really, really amazing coincidence that my actions got together the way that they did and they developed the consciousness. But I think ultimately, when we die, it's like it was all for nothing. But recently, so I used to think that life was meaningless because of this. Even if I really enjoyed living, even if I really enjoyed my friends and family and my wife, I used to think that it was all for nothing and it was all meaningless. But then I realized that I'm alive right now. And if I see meaning to it, it automatically has meaning. So if I see purpose in my life, then in a way it has purpose. And I don't need some kind of God, which I don't believe in, to tell me what my purpose is. So I guess it's a long way to answer your question, but but just to explain how I can never be sure of what my purpose is, I guess I find a lot of, let's say, I find a lot of gratification in doing what I do, because I get to see some positive impact that I have on people. Of course, it's nice to sell books and I need the money to survive. I'm not going to say otherwise. But almost weekly, I receive a message even today, I was organizing my email and I saw a bunch of them. People that read my books or saw my show and really really were impacted by it, and that's really a beautiful thing to feel, you know, because to know that someone that I don't know, someone I don't know somewhere over there read my book and it had a positive impact in their life. So up until now, if I would have any kind of purpose, I guess it would be to share what worked for me, you know, because I don't think everyone should travel. I usually am very careful. I don't want to be that traveler that thinks that traveling is the best thing in the world. I think what's best in the world is, and also I'm not one person that says if you can dream it, you can do it. I don't say that also. So I think I could never be like a motivational speaker, because I think I can be motivational, but I also want to be grounded. No, if you maybe you can dream it and you can't do it. Maybe it's not, you know, but the one thing I do say is that if you don't try it, then you won't do it. You know, that's like a fact. And for me, it's traveling, but I can't tell someone else that it's traveling. I don't even know them. But what I more than traveling, what I think is important is for people to look inside and try to understand what they want, you know. And if they're fine with whatever they want, then that's great, you know. If life was easy and you wanted to be a teacher since you were a kid, and you're 35 and you're a teacher and you're happy, great. I'm not gonna go like, no, you should go traveling, you shouldn't be a teacher. No, you know, be able to do whatever. But I appreciate the importance of self-reflection and looking within and trying to understand ourselves. Okay, what do I want? And once I know what I want, how can I get there? And it's really hard sometimes, you know, like for me, I discovered selling books at the beach. If I hadn't, I don't know, maybe I would be working in a supermarket or whatever. But I do think that it's really important to keep this self-respect of knowing that we gave it our best shot.
Perfect, perfect. Like I will sublime every word that you said it already, because I think it's like that really. And I'm thinking now, imagine I already find something that I love to do. I'm not saying that is travel. Maybe it can be writing a book or doing a podcast. It doesn't matter. But I'm too afraid to try it, to give it that steps, to go out of what society thinks it's supposed to be correct. Like you should be a psychologist, or you understand me what I say. Which advice do you say to me or to someone else that is too afraid of trying?
Well, what I said before, I think could be important. If we don't try, then we don't know.
Exactly.
But I think like we should weigh what we got to lose. For example, I know someone that has a certain job, and it's someone that is very, very close to me. And I think that this person, I know, I know, it's not, I know that this person is not happy in their job. And a job is something that, if you take away when we're a kid, if we take away our active life, a job is something we do half of the time we're awake, at least on weekdays. So it, uh, for most people, it has a big impact on how happy we are. Some people, okay, some people, they go to work and it doesn't matter what it is. They just like zone out, tune out, and then they're back and it's fine and it doesn't matter. But for a lot of people, it does, because we take a lot of time doing it. So we should be able to, well, if we can, of course, because, for example, you live in Germany, I live in Portugal. There's different conditions of life already.
Exactly.
So it's easier to find a job in Germany than in Portugal, for example. But what I uh, what I found out, for example, when my biggest learning in Norway was that I had, when I was working as an intern, I had colleagues that they were therapists like myself, but before they were, you know, they used to work in a bank until they were 40, or in a sporting goods shop until they were 42. And then they wanted to change careers and boom, they did. So at the time I was very in love with that notion. I was like, why don't people do this more often? And I was thinking, okay, but Norway has a 3% unemployment rate. Portugal has 11, or what it was in 2008. I don't remember.
Exactly.
So it's important to take this into account. I don't advise people to just, quit everything and just go and not care about anything. That's what I did, and it worked. It's been working, but I understand that it's more difficult. So I'm not a big fan of envisioning things. Like, I think just the fact that you envision yourself in the position that you want, I don't think that necessarily helps, but it could help at least in. So what do I do next? It's like I want to have this kind of life, but what are the steps to get there? Of course, a lot of people can just quit their jobs and go, but I don't necessarily recommend that. But more trying to find, okay, if I want to be a writer, for example, I can give you all of my personal examples. So my dream has always been to be a writer, because that's the best. It's difficult to give advice for a field that I don't understand anything of,
Okay.
So I can only speak about my own example, then people can try to see how that relates for them. So my dream has always been to be a writer, ever since I knew what the concept of dream was, to live as a writer, not just to write a book, but to be a writer. And I published 2 books in 2009, 2011 with a publisher. And with a publisher, you get 10%. And also I realized somewhere along the way that I'm not a genius. I think it's important also to have that realization, unless people are geniuses. But I'm not a genius, so I'm going to need something more. Maybe, I'm not a genius. Maybe if I try hard enough, I can be good enough. So how can I make more money from writing? And I realized that if I self-published my book, instead of profiting 10%, I could profit 70%, not 17, 70, 70. So, and I did my calculations, and I thought, if I sell 1,000 books a year, I make like 700 or 800 euro a month, which is more than the minimum wage in Portugal. So I'm going to self-publish. Okay, but how do I pay for the book if I self-publish? Well, in my case, in my Asian book, I had money from when I worked as a therapist in England. But in my African book, I didn't. So I did a crowdfunding campaign. So the thing is, the goal that we have, we don't need to take the same road that everybody else did. Because for me to be a writer, the road that everybody else took was, well, not everybody, you know what I mean? Most people that I knew.
The common.
Yeah, like, be good and find a publisher, and that's it. For me was, don't give up the publisher, do your own book, finance it with crowdfunding, and then sell. So I didn't focus too much on selling because, I did, but only in the first year after the book was out. Because the book is new, I had a Facebook page that now doesn't count for much. Now it's Instagram. And sold a good number. But then, second year, the book is not new anymore. People don't buy. But I still did a stint of 2 years in England as a therapist, so I didn't really need to sell much. But it was in 2014 that I quit my job for the last time, 2013. And I went to Africa. And contrarily to what my advice was previously, I didn't really know what I was going to do. But I knew that I want to do that. I want to cycle Africa. And once I came back, the third most important thing that I did in my life was one being, writing, the other one being self-publishing, was one, crowdfunding. The other one was, I thought, where do people read books? And I realized people read books at the beach. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And of course, once we take this decision that is not very intuitive, we have all the people we are inside ourselves, the careful one, the this one, the that one, was telling me, don't go, it's going to be embarrassing. You're going to bother people. You're not going to sell anything. But I knew that, like I said before, it's like I had to try to know. And I went, and it was the best decision I've ever made. I went in 2017, and I sold 500 books, and then 800 books next year, and 950 books next year. And so I didn't have a very clear plan in the beginning. I had some ideas, but this is how it worked for me. And if anything, if anyone can take anything from this, it should be that, like, the most basic message is that we can reach the goal that we see, but don't take the same road that everybody else took to get there. If it means selling books at the beach, fuck it, let's sell books at the beach, you know? If it means self-publishing, then let's self-publish, whatever it takes.
Awesome, 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 awesome. And like you have a way of thinking that is very outside of the box. You are the first person, and the listeners can say like we're selling books on the beach. Like where that idea comes from, you know, like how you listen, like it's intuitions or like how you decided to put something in your mind and it's amazing.
I can tell you, it just came to me. I don't know. I never saw anyone doing it. And I thought about this years ago, but at the time I tried like 2 days and I was still a psychologist, so I didn't need the money. So I didn't care so much. But then like retrieved the idea again in 2017. But I don't know, I guess I was thinking, where do people read books? And I was like, at the beach, because at the people that read 2 books a year, they read it at the beach. And you know, it's not an easy job, but because I have to talk to strangers all the time, which for me is not that hard, talking to strangers. I'm a sociable guy, but sometimes it's hard, like getting no after no after no. Sometimes, very rarely, sometimes people are a bit of douchebags to me, but it's very rare. And yeah, I can't complain. In the end, it's good.
It's awesome, man. And like now I want to know because it's already amazing. I'm amazed, like for sure that you had some tough times on your trips, and I wanted to know, like, if you can say one story or another one. And with that, I'm very curious how you describe your mindset because for me, at my point of view, it's superation after superation. Like, how you describe your mindset?
I guess I would describe it as a logical, optimistic realist. Logical, optimistic realist. Because I don't like bullshit. I like, that's what I was saying before. If you can dream it, you can do it. No, no, it's not true. And it's not like a school of thought. It's just not true. If I want to win the Nobel, if I dream about winning the Nobel Prize, I will probably not going to make it, you know? And I'm not even talking about being a writer. So I'm a very logical person. And I'm an optimistic realistic because it means that, for example, it sounds like pessimism, but I see myself as just another guy. So I know that the world is full of people that want to be artists, musicians, actors, writers, sculptors, whatever. Sculptures, not so much, maybe. And I know that most of them won't make it. So for them, I am one of those guys. I'm just someone else. So why do I have to make it? If I think of probability, the probability is against me. So I understand within me that there's a chance I don't make it. But I also understand, because when people hear this, they think that I'm being like resigned or like I don't give a shit. And it's difficult for people to understand that, no, it's not that. Like, it's one thing to understand my probabilities, because I can't afford to think that I'm special, because maybe I'm not. Not everybody can be special. And it's hard to confront yourself with the possibility that maybe you're not special, maybe you're not good, you know? And I think about this, like, what if I'm not good enough? Could be. Of course, I can try to be better all the time, and I do. But I live with a constant notion that maybe I'm not good enough. But I also live with the notion that but I will fucking try, you know? And so I think if I'm having
Goosebumps.
goosebumps now, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a bit difficult to describe, but I would describe it as logical because I see the steps towards something. I don't believe in cute words. I believe in having a positive spirit, but like if as long as it means that you make things, and realist because I know that it's the odds are against me, but optimist because fuck it, let's go and see. And even if life doesn't turn out the way that I wish, I also have a strategy for that, which is, I realize that imagine the most successful people on earth. Imagine in terms of the arts, we can talk about the Rolling Stones, maybe, or whatever. We could say 50 names, and the most unsuccessful ones, but inside the group of people that tried, both the Rolling Stones, super famous, and both Philip, just some guy that tried for 10 years and failed. Both of these people, I'm sure they miss the times when they were like fighting for success and everything was uncertain. Both of them miss it. So I realized some years ago, I'm in that moment now. I'm fighting for success. So I know that I will miss this period in my life, whether I win a Nobel Prize or whether I work in a supermarket. No offense to people that work in supermarkets, of course. So even that like made me look at this period in my life. Now with selling books at the beach, I'm more stable. Before I wasn't. But even that made me look at my own life and not feel despair. Because sometimes we might feel despair, like, oh shit, man, that angst in your body, what am I going to do? Because I knew that this is fun, I'm trying and it's uncertain and I'm alive and I don't want to live like I'm just waiting for the next thing. Every time we're alive, it's right now. And right now it's uncertain and I'm giving it my best shot. And yeah, if I make it like a really famous writer, I will look back and think like, wow, that was some nice moments. And if I fail, I'm going to look back and think exactly the same thing. Wow, those were some nice moments. So even for that, like I think I found a strategy to just feel more cool with things, about how life turns out, and accept that I have little control over things. I have some. Well, deep down, I think I have none. But in the way I live life, there's many things that evade me. In terms of there's luck, there's talent that I might not have.
Beautiful, Pedro, man. No, beautiful, really. I will do the rewind of the interview just a couple of times to take the info. Now I was thinking, man, for sure that in your trips you had moments that you wanted to give up. It's like what make you continue to go to, because it's amazing, like going from bicycle from here from Portugal to Africa. We don't, you are not Armstrong or like how it's, how you didn't give up, like it's
it's interesting because what you just said, a lot of people say it, and I'm telling you the truth when I say that I never thought about giving up, never. And I'm not saying like it's a good thing. I think what's important is whether you give up or not whether you think it. But I never really thought about giving up. Like I had a lot of bad moments, because it's far.
it's very far.
It's very far. And sometimes the roads are terrible. And sometimes the roads are terrible and you have no water and there's mud and stones and bugs and it's really, really hot. And in that moment, I kind of don't want to be there, but I know I made that choice. I made the choice to cycle to South Africa, and I know what comes with it. I knew. I mean, if something happened that was like unexpected, then I was like, oh shit, I didn't count on this. But I have to say, even like one time I was in Africa, in Gabon, in Equatorial Africa, and there was a gorilla next to me. And I was like, and I couldn't see it, I could only hear it. And for some reason, I thought it was a panther, a black panther, because I only heard like, wow.
Better.
I was like, fucking hell. And I thought I was going to die. But in that moment, I don't, like, I considered that I considered wild animals were a possibility. I considered that before I went. So, well, I survived. It went in and it was okay. But I didn't want to stop because everything that happened, no matter how hard, was something that I knew was going to come. But that can be a problem. Like sometimes I was really tired and like I wanted to do 100% of the route cycling. No rides, no buses, nothing. And sometimes I'm very stubborn. And that can be a problem because sometimes it's okay to take a ride, you know?
Yes.
If you're really, and I remember I was in Guinea-Bissau and it's like, I've been feeling like this twice a week, more or less. It's like I'm cycling and I become extremely tired. I have goosebumps in my whole body, although it's 40 degrees. My head starts to ache. My nose starts to run. And it's like I'm in a dream, But I'm like, no, I'm going to make it. And sometimes it's okay to say, no, I don't have the right conditions to do this right now. And that's like a tricky part because you don't want to give up. But for me, I eventually understood that, okay, it's okay to give up. I'm not giving up the trip. But I'm always afraid that like, oh, if I start taking rides, I'm going to be taking rides all the time. So it's something that I want to give up after I really, really know inside myself that I have to do it and then do it. Not just do it like the first time. And I think I haven't mastered this, because not only cycling to South Africa, sometimes in life, we should give up, I think, and pursue something else. But I'm not sure about the when. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I mean, for example, if you're trying to be a professional football player and you're 25 and you never played not even in the second league, maybe, okay, let's say 28, you're 28. Maybe it's not going to be for you. And, but with football, it's easier with football. With other things, it's harder. For example, and it even depends on what it is. Like writers never give up because they can do other job and be a writer, and it's not up to being like it doesn't depend on how old you are. Like Saramago, I think it's 10 years today since he died. Saramago was, for international listeners, was one of two Portuguese Nobel laureates. He won the literature one, and he started writing when he was 45. So it also depends on the field. But I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes it's good to know when we should give up. And I eventually in Bissau, I couldn't. I was like lying on the road, and I have a video. I will send it to you later. Even my voice was different, and I'm saying, speaking to the camera, and I'm saying, I have to release myself from myself, and I have to accept a ride, and I accepted a ride, and then it was like a detour, so I didn't even need to cycle that according to my own rules. So yeah, I never really thought about quitting the trip itself, not even when I was arrested in Laos or. I questioned it in Central America. Central America, I questioned it because It was a strange trip. I was feeling a bit lonely in the beginning, and I didn't think about quitting, but I questioned it because I don't know. It's the first trip that I started, and usually I start in Portugal. This trip I started in Panama,
Mm.
and I was feeling lonely, and but yeah, I knew what I was doing. Like I chose to do it, so in the end, I went all the way, and I knew that if I quit, I would never forgive myself. So, yeah,
Yeah, but it's amazing. I want to. Can you share like that story in Lagos that you were arrested
in
or
Laos.
Laos? Okay, sorry.
Well, it's a very long story. I don't tell it so much nowadays because I became tired of it.
Okay, if
Um,
you like.
but I can say it generally because the story takes 20 minutes,
Okay.
so I can say it generally. I was tubing in Vang Vieng in Laos, and it was an activity where people rent a tube and then a floater, and they float down the river. And yeah, it's a party place, and I partied, and I got super wasted. And the next thing I knew I was in a jail, but it looked like a cave. So I thought I was kidnapped, not in prison.
Whoa.
And there was a crazy woman screaming in the next jail. So I thought she was being raped, and I was yeah. For 2 hours I thought I was kidnapped. Only after 2 hours, I tried to release myself, and everybody tried the revolution there. And for the non lusophone listeners, I have this book in Portuguese, by the way. So if you want it, I send it abroad. You can find me on Instagram on Pedro On The
I
Road.
will. I will put it.
But yeah, I was there for 2 nights, and it was the worst experience of my whole life. It was really, really, really tough. And once I got released, I was shaken. I was shaken by for a couple of weeks. But yeah, even then, I didn't think I should just go home. I didn't. I mean, I thought I was gonna die at one point when I thought I was kidnapped. I thought I was gonna die. So in that moment, I wish I was home. But yeah, because I wasn't ready to die. So yeah, but I didn't die. And once I got away from prison, I just kept going. So because it happens, shit happens. I knew that kind of shit happened to people. I didn't expect it to be to me, but because it's like getting eaten by an animal in Africa. It's like I know it happens. All I hope for is that it's not with me. But I know it's not a surprise. Like, oh, people get killed and robbed and eaten and in prison. That happens, and I know it happens. Hopefully, not to me, but it happened to me.
Man, but it's so crazy, man. Like, I mean, imagine like you go, you get wasted a couple of beers, and you wake up. Like, always the moment that you think that, like, because I never talk with the person that like passed for that moment. Always the moment that you think that you will die, man. What's
So
happening
I came I
inside?
came to my senses, and I was still in the car, and the car was a normal car. It wasn't a police car, and there were two policemen in front, but they were dressed in plain clothes, and the car was driving through the middle of the forest with darkness all around, and I had my hands cuffed behind my back like this. They were handcuffs, proper handcuffs, not just a rope. So I should have suspected that it was a police, but I didn't. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And immediately I thought I was kidnapped.
Whoa.
I mean, I don't know if I was drugged. I can tell you that I was pretty drunk, but I don't know if I was drugged. I don't know what happened. I just know that I came to my senses. I was like, and I tried to release myself, like in the movies, like this, under my feet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we saw the
No way.
movies.
No way, because your hands are not, they're not cuffed like this.
Okay.
They're cuffed like this, you know? So
Ah,
if
okay.
it was like this,
Mm.
maybe it would be possible. But like this, it's impossible. And and I thought I was kidnapped, and the fact that they wouldn't tell me anything, and the fact that once I got to prison, it was a fucking shithole, and it was just me and 21 guys from Laos. I was the only foreigner. That didn't help, and yeah, it was a stressful time. It's only after because I kept hearing this girl screaming in the next jail cell, like, "Ah!" And I thought she was being raped, and I thought I gotta. And this is like probably the one of the only nice parts about this story is that I really wanted to save her, in spite of believing that I was kidnapped. And there was a guy next to me, and he'd been in. I discovered the next day that he'd been in jail for a long time, so he knew the prison guards. But when I got in, I saw him talking to them, and I thought, this guy is a threat. He's like an inside man, like in the movies.
Hmm.
So hearing the woman screaming, I thought that the first step for me to release her was to neutralize the inside man. And I'm not proud of what I did, but like I got up and he was sleeping, and I kicked him, and everybody woke up, and I started screaming, "Revolution! We can do it together!" And then like they just stood looking at me, and I was like, "Okay, they've given up. They've given up." And I sat down, and I really, in this moment, I gave up. I was like, "Fuck! There's nothing I can do. Nobody will help me." And I said, "I'm sorry. Please don't tell the guys from the outside. I don't want to be the first to die." And only now somebody, and this was, maybe it was 2 hours since I got in. It's difficult for me to know. But now, like, somebody got up and they sat in front of me and they said, "You're not going to die. You're in jail." And fuck, I was so relieved to be in jail. I think nobody was ever so relieved. Like, I'm in jail? Yes. Because it's better to be in jail than kidnapped, right?
I will say it's a lose-lose situation, but yes, I will say yes. It's better
Yeah.
kidnap. It's only man. Now I'm having
better jail.
goosebumps. Yes, man. Wow, crazy. Like I'm completely, and I'm also very interested. Like, did you had like now going a little bit in another way? Any daily habits when you were traveling? How it was? It was a day in the
I,
life.
I did more when I was in Africa, because when I was in Asia and in Central America, of course I did many other trips, but usually I speak more about these three big trips. But when I was in Central America and in Asia, I would hitchhike only. No, well, most of the time in Central America only. And I would get to a city, then go and sightsee, stay with someone if I met someone there. So there wasn't really a habit. But in Africa, there was, because in Africa, I had most of my day was spent cycling from village to village. And I would wake up and cook my breakfast. It would take me like an hour, maybe. I would do it with time, like cooking the breakfast, putting the things, everything back in the bicycle. Oh man, I miss it so much talking about it now. And I would cook like always the same thing, like pasta with some tomato paste and sardines or tuna. I'm a vegetarian now, so now I would do it differently, but at the time that's what I did. And then I would cycle I would say goodbye to the village where they received me, because people received me all the time. They were very, very nice to me. And then I would cycle for about 2 hours, and I would buy a pineapple or a mango, depending on the country. So like Guinea Conakry, Sierra Leone, for example, baked mangoes like this for 20 cents. But then like Sierra Leone, Liberia, not pineapple, mangoes, but then Sierra Leone, Liberia, pineapples. and I would eat a pineapple, smoke a cigarette, and then cycle for 2 hours longer, stop for lunch, and then I would cycle in the afternoon, stop sometimes for to drink water or to smoke a cigarette. People are always like, "What, you were cycling and smoking a cigarette?" Yeah, yeah, I was. I enjoyed it.
Better than Armstrong.
People think of a person cycling in Africa, and the image of them smoking a cigarette is strange. But yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I still do. And cycle all day, and when it's like 6 in the afternoon, I would stop in some village, and I would ask to see the chief. Well, is the chief around? And the chief would come. A lot of times was a woman, which is interesting. And say, "Hi, I just came from Portugal with my bicycle. Do you think I can pitch my tent somewhere?" And 100% of the times they would give me a room. And I would ask they would give me a room. I would put my things there. I would ask where the river is. And I would go to the river, like wash my day away. And then I would just sit with the chief looking at the road where no cars go, no cars pass. And it was really nice, because, when people go to a place and they say, "Oh, I really saw how they live and shit like that." Yeah, for me, it was like that every day because I was not every day, but if I had to go through a forest, it was every day like that. And I would stay in those little villages, like sometimes a village with 20 people. 20 people, and the next village is, I don't know, 40 kilometers that way, like with mud, and the next one is 40 kilometers that way with mud. I was in this village where the troops, the army would pass and they would give a ride to one of the sons, and he was a good hunter. So we would go with the army, fire some deer, boom, 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 give one deer to the army to eat. So
Exactly.
it's not like just to,
Yeah. It's
and
not
then just
hunting for hunting.
bring a deer back. So yeah, that was like the closest I had to a routine, like the thing with the cigarettes and the mangoes and the cooking, and I would camp as well. But yeah, that was the closest I had to a routine.
Um, and like, if we had to say now, like traveling, and just to be more, to say it in a top three, which lessons did you learn by traveling? If we have to say, like, which was the lessons that you learned?
Well, I don't know if I learned. The thing is, like, I've traveled and I've experimented with substances, and I had all kinds of experiences in my life. Well, not all kinds, but no, usually like people change a lot when they travel and when they take like LSD or what or mushrooms or whatever, or when they fall in love. But I don't think I ever like changed like deeply. I think I've changed slowly. Like, and so traveling never, well, it has taught me many lessons, but I don't think like a true like deep rooted lesson that I never thought about.
Hmm.
So for example, I can say that the first time that I crossed um, Muslim countries, I was very amazed by how nice they were to me, and I came back with this feeling like I really need to be these guys' ambassadors, because the whole world thinks that they're a bunch of terrorists, and they're not. So, but so it changed. I learned that they weren't, but deep down, I already knew that.
Okay.
Deep down, I already knew that they were just people with a different upbringing, different social life, and so that. But okay, I guess I can still call it a lesson. But let me just. I guess I can still call it a lesson that what we are is a perfect mixture of our genetic code
Okay.
and our social upbringing. It's just the stories that people tell us. I'm gonna smoke a cigarette if you don't mind.
No, no, it's okay.
So yeah, like I got to see in the first-hand experience that the difference between people all over the world is not because some people have a certain genetic code and others don't. It's more that some people were taught a certain story and other people were taught a different story. Um, what other lessons did I take? I learned how to manipulate people as well,
Okay.
especially. But then again, like I think everyone that is more or less intelligent has probably has like some ability to manipulate people. It's just whether we use it or not. It's like a superpower that we shouldn't use. But if we are being fucked by the police in Nigeria, for example, then maybe we should use that power. And so I learned, I learned how to know, because usually I'm very naive. I think everybody is a great person.
Hmm.
And I learned how to spot when someone isn't. As for the third lesson, yeah, traveling was the only time that I really came across racist people. I mean, I've been with racist people in Portugal, but I didn't know that they were racist because usually racist people they know that they shouldn't say what they say, unless they were like behind a screen on Facebook or something. But in Namibia and South Africa, I met a lot of. There's a lot of white people in South Africa and Namibia. There's like 7% in South Africa and 8% in Namibia are whites, which is a lot for an African country. And I guess I learned that, yeah, people can really, really be racist and know that they are racist and still say whatever they want to say. And it's uncomfortable. It's like when I was in Namibia, I was staying with this guy that he was clearly racist. Like he didn't want his daughter to ever marry a black man. But I was staying in his house, so it's uncomfortable. At the same time, I can't just say, yeah, of course. I have to say what I think because I'm a big believer in sincerity. So yeah, that was uncomfortable. So I guess if you ask me tomorrow about different lessons, I would give you different lessons as well. Because of course there's like 25 million smaller lessons that we take, but maybe now that these would be the ones that I would give you.
Okay, perfect. So now I want to talk a little bit about the last book, man. The idea behind the book. Also, I think it's not just the traveling, but the concept between you believing in idea and acting on it. I love that concept that you put in the book. I will order today, but if you can do a small
Okay.
resume.
So what I thought was I thought that so in my first book in Asia, I had a lot of great stories. I was arrested in Laos, which is the one that I briefly mentioned. I was in Pakistan when they shot Bin Laden. I was in Syria when the revolution started. There was a lot of bullet points that for the reader, I could just say these things and it would be like, oh, interesting. In Africa, I stayed with a family that invited me for a shamanic ritual. And I, by accident, volunteered to be the shaman, and I took this psychedelic drug called iboga, and that was like a really interesting experience. And I had a lot of other experiences that I could sell my book with that. And but in Central America, I realized that it was a great trip, but I was missing the like a something that made the book stronger, as strong as the other ones. So what I thought was I started thinking about how I could make this. I started thinking how I could make this book better, And I thought that this book could be a book inside a book. Also because it's one of my dreams that I haven't fulfilled yet, to write a novel. And I've started 5 novels, and I never finished any, but I need to finish one. So I wanted to trap myself, to make myself finish one novel. So what we have in this book is, the book begins in 2066 in the future. And there's this old man that he wants to die. What happened? But it's not allowed. So euthanasia was legalized in Portugal, and I guessed that right, because after I published the book, it was. So it was a good guess, but it was an easy guess. But I also explained that there was a rise in extreme right in Portugal, and we are seeing that happening now. And at a certain point in time, the extreme right, in order to for the moderate right, like PSD, in order for the moderate right to be in power, they had to have a coalition with the extreme right. And one of the things that the extreme right wanted was no euthanasia. So euthanasia was penalized again. And once so this guy wants to die and he can't. And he has another old man in his next bed, and this old man is visited by someone else, and he hears these people speaking, and he thinks, maybe this guy can help me. And one day he catches the guy that is visiting the other old man, and he approaches him and he tells him, listen, I've heard you speak. You're very frustrated with the depenalization or the penalization of euthanasia. The thing is, I want to die. Will you help me die? And the young man is faced with the choice that we are many times, which is, it's one thing to have an idea about something. It's another thing to actually act on it. And he starts to try to persuade the older man that it's worth to live. It's worth it. And the older man says, okay, listen, I understand what you're saying, but do me this favor. You will take this book with you and you will read it, and you will understand that I have lived and this is not life. And the younger man, he says, okay. And it takes home a book that the older guy wrote 50 years before about a trip that I did in 2018 in Central America. And then, so as the reader in real life, you are reading all of this. And then you start reading the old man's book about Central America, but that's the book about my trip. And that's like real. And I really enjoyed how it worked out. So you have like 25 pages of my real trip in Central America. And then you have 7 pages of the younger guy visiting the older guy, and the relationship that they establish, and will he help him die or not. And also, like, the older man, he lived all his life as a travel writer, but he never did what he wanted to do, which was to write a travel book, which is also what I want to do. So the younger guy also wants to write, the older guy never wrote a novel. And, you know, basically in the end, there's a strategy that arises for the younger guy to write his novel because of the interaction that he had with the older guy. It's a bit difficult to say without spoiling, you know.
Exactly, but let's keep it.
But it worked. It worked very well. I'm very happy with the result, and I think, although I don't have a story like being arrested in Laos or anything, it's my best book so far. So it worked well.
I think the idea is brilliant, first of all. And now let me ask you, if for the people that don't know, and for the Portuguese speaker all over the world, where they can find you, your book.
Well, I have I don't know how to write it here, but I have, maybe my Instagram page is the best.
I will put it.
It's Pedro On The Road.
Okay.
And people send me a message, and then I have, in Portuguese, of course, I have all my 3 travel books, and in English I have my Asian one, which is so if anybody wants the Asian book, they can also get it.
Awesome.
Pedro on the Road on Instagram. I always reply to the messages.
I will put in the description of the video also.
Okay.
Now, and I want to do new project, new trips, new books. What's happening?
Well, I'm in a peculiar time in my life because
Okay.
me and my wife are trying to have a baby. So
Beautiful.
this it's not being very easy. We've had 3 miscarriages, so it's being a hard process, and I'm not sure that we will make. It's like what I was saying before about being resigned, but still doing everything we can. So I'm resigned if it doesn't happen for us, but I will still try to do. It's not resignation like fuck it. It's not that. It's like philosophical resignation, but practical investment. So I will still try to do whatever I can to do it. But if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen, and I accept. Having kids, just this week I was interviewing for my show a guy that cycled for like 2 years. Him, his wife, and his kids were 8 years old and 10 years old. And when they finished their trip, the kids were 10 years old and 12 years old. And they did the homeschooling. It's not it's official homeschooling, but they're not at home. And then they have to do a test and whatever. And it's really inspiring to hear this kind of people because I know that I can travel and I know that I can travel with my family also. But of course, it doesn't depend only on me. It depends on what my wife will want. So I don't really have any clear plan right now. I'm going to start being a guide to Algeria with an agency.
Okay.
To Algeria and then to another destination that is not official yet.
Okay.
So I'm going to do that. And I applied for, there was a Netflix contest.
Okay.
And to like design a TV show. And I participated with a friend of mine. We were, it was 1,200 applications. So I don't think, and it's again the same story. I don't think we're going to win, but I did my best. But the story was so good that I would also like to put that into paper and make it a book if we don't win. So these are more or less my projects, but I would like to run from Luanda in Angola to Maputo in Mozambique. I would like to go from Portugal to North Korea with a unicycle, only one wheel,
yes,
like the clowns. But it's just ideas that come, and because once you do a trip like this, then you're always thinking about the next one. But so far, and I want to finish my goddamn novel. Yeah, that's if I had a priority, it would be to finish my novel.
Okay. Now I wanted to ask you if it's not your book, which one, after this conversation, you will advise me to read? If it's not Vago.
If a book that is not mine or other book of mine?
Other book that is not yours.
Okay.
Like me.
Well, there's a book that is very popular, so I'm sure you've been advised to read this book many times, but I think it's a great read. It's called Sapiens.
Okay, yes.
A book by Yuval Noah Harari, where it's the history of humankind from pre-Homo sapiens to right now, more or less. And it's a great read. You read it very well, and you learn a lot. It's like I read it once, and then I read half of it again, because it's so much information that it's difficult to take it all in. But yeah, I would advise that book. Maybe if you ask me tomorrow, I would advise a different book. But right now, I would advise Sapiens.
No, perfect. Now I wanted just to ask you, just to end, if it's okay, how it was like. I'm curious also. You told me about like the hallucinogenic experience, the shaman experience. Like how it was that, man. Can you describe it a little bit? Because like we don't have a lot of that in our society.
So that's also a long story, but I can tell you more like more or less. I was in Gabon, and they, as I was saying before, every day I would stay with with the people there, and I would ask for a place to put my tent, and they would give me a room. And one time I ended up in this village, and the son invited me for a ceremony. And I heard about this ceremony before, but like 2 days prior, but when somebody was telling me about this ceremony, like somebody came and it was like, shh, don't say that to the white man. So I realized it was like a secret, and they didn't want the white man to know. So of course I felt very curious about it. And when somebody invited me, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And I went to ask the chief if, okay, hey, your son invited me for a ceremony. Is that okay? I was like, yeah, of course, yeah, it's fine. And I asked him how the ceremony went, and he explained, but I made a mistake, and I involuntarily, I volunteered to be the shaman, but I didn't. That's not what I was trying to do, because he was telling me that I wouldn't have any hallucinations. I would only eat a little bit of the iboga. And I said, yeah, but I would like to see something, But I just wanted him to give me a bit more. But he thought that I was volunteering to take his place as a shaman. And I only realized it when it was too late. Like, we spent all morning doing my introduction. And, okay, what's got to leave da África, por favor. And we spent all morning doing my introduction. And then we go to, everything is bush, but we go to like the deep, deep bush. And everybody eats a spoon of this, but I eat none.
Okay.
And I think, okay, he regretted it, but being here is already like really interesting. So even if I don't take any substances, it's already an interesting experience. But then they start to paint me in white, and I'm the only person in white. And then I finally get to eat some, and I eat 10 times more than anyone else. Imagine, like, they were 14 people, and together they ate 25% of the plate, and me alone, I ate 75% of the plate. And this is the cover of my book, and this is how I was at a certain point. This is me.
Whoa.
And
this was the day.
This was it was like at 4 a.m. or something.
Whoa.
It's a really bizarre image. And I said that being arrested in Laos was the worst experience of my life. This one, it wasn't the worst experience of my life because I took something positive out of it, but it was the worst 12 hours of my life because I had a very bad trip in terms of a philosophical bad trip, because as I said before, I don't believe in God, and I don't believe in heaven or anything. I don't believe in anything, basically. I only believe that I'm here right now. And usually I can deal with that. But this time I couldn't deal with it. It's like the notion that I will die and that I will be dead forever was so deep for me. It was such an agony. And I just swam in this metaphysical shit for 12 hours. I had this ball of adrenaline inside me. And for the first time, I understood how someone would kill themselves. It's really a strange thing to say, but I never thought about killing myself. Don't get me wrong. But that kind of agony, if it was like that all the time, I wouldn't want to live. It was like such an emptiness inside me, And that's why I don't really recommend this substance to everyone. I mean, sometimes I have a friend or two that from who they are, and I see that they're like me. Like, I'm luckily for me, I'm quite solid in my mind. So I think like maybe for some people they can go and come back, but there's a danger of going in this substance and not coming back. So I don't really recommend it to just anyone. But yeah, in the end, I made it. I made it alive, and I didn't go crazy. I thought I would go crazy, but I didn't go crazy. And yeah, I survived to tell the story.
Whoa, crazy story after story, Will. Now, just to end, like for me, I think like listen to you, I'm seeing that, or correct me if I'm wrong, that you listen a lot to yourself, to your intuition, to your gut. I think part of our as society, we are stopping to do that. How do
I
you?
don't know if we're.
Mm.
Go on,
Tell
go
me,
on.
tell me, tell me. How do you think that we can invert that process? If you think that or not, like.
I can't tell you that we do that more or less in as a society because I didn't know how much people made it before, so I can't really compare. Um, for me, it's difficult for me to answer that question because some people shouldn't go with that gut because it depends. Not all of us have the same instincts. You know, like for me, I have instincts that go through a layer of reason. Well, I like to believe that. Maybe it's not true. Well, a lot of people will say, no, if you cycle South Africa, there's no reason. There's no reason. But for me, there is. For example, I spoke about logic before. When people die in a country, and imagine you hear that, well, 10 people were killed, 10 tourists were killed in Nigeria. A lot of people won't go. But for me, I think, okay, I want to go. That's my instinct. But now I need the net, the filter of reason. Okay, 10 people died. Out of how many? 100. If 10 people died out of 100, it means that it's 10% chance I'm not going to go. 10% is too much. I value my life too much. Yeah, if it's 10 in 10,000, then it's 1 in 1,000. I can deal with that. So I think it's good to go by our instincts if we have good instincts. But it's difficult to know how good our instincts are unless we try some of them and see how that goes. So I'm sorry, but I don't really have a clear answer for that because it's not very palpable. It's not very clear.
It was clear enough for me sometimes, and after it's a little bit, it goes in cycles. Like you have to try it, like you said it before. You have to try it to see if it's right or not. Of course, like little steps at my point of view, but how you will know if you didn't try it?
Yeah,
I think it will be a little bit like that. Now, to end, do you have any last words, any last advice that you want to give me and to the people that are listening to the podcast?
Well, nothing that I haven't said before, but I can quickly say it again, which is I hope there's like, although I don't believe in it, I hope there's heaven, some kind of immortal life that is nice, that is not too heavy for us, some kind of different concept. But I don't know. And I don't think anyone can know for sure. So it really looks like this is all we got, this life. And if this is all we got, then whatever we want to do with our life, we have to try it in this life, not in the next. We're not so important, and things are not that serious. Like we take into account the opinions of other people way more than we should, I think. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Most things don't matter. And once we can strip away the notion that other people's opinions don't scratch us, that we can like, and that if we fail, we probably won't die. That's everything there is, I think. The way I see it, but you asked my opinion, so what I'm saying is just
beautiful.
Like, it's like it most things don't matter, and we give up so many times. We give up our dreams because of some bullshit that doesn't really matter. Like, you know, people get hung up on so many little things, like what that person said about me, what that person thinks about me, this, bam, 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 bam. and it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter. So for now, yeah, I would close with that.
With me, with goosebumps, man. And it's so true. Thank you so much, Pedro, once again.
Nice. My
Guys,
pleasure.
take notes of this interview because it's a lot of knowledge, man. Thank you so much again, and a lot of health for you and Graciette, and everything smooth, okay?
Okay,
Guys,
thank you, man.
don't forget to subscribe and comment. Thank you. And also, I will put in Pedro's Instagram. Go there, buy the book, and give it a thumbs up. Guys, see you.